Should older Left Behind content from Destiny 1 make its way back into Destiny 2? What's going on, Guardians? TBL here, and that is a question I have been asking myself and others basically since Destiny 2 initially came out. Now, as we know, Destiny 2 has been out for several months now, and taking a look at the state of the game, we know it's not in a very good spot right now, especially when you compare it to the way Destiny 1 ended. But something that was always a bit of a head scratcher to me, something that was always never really very well explained, was why Destiny 2 started with such a lack of options and activities when Destiny 1 wound up with such a robust endgame and such a robust list of things that you could do basically every week to make sure that your time in Destiny was well spent. And in this video, I kind of want to talk about some of the things that are missing from Destiny 2 right now, and some things that I really kind of wish would come back. You know, things that I really feel that there's no reason for them not to be in the game, for them not to be available with the world of Destiny 2 that we've got right now, given what we know about Destiny 2's development and what the game is truly capable of. So let's go ahead and get started. We know Destiny 2 is dry right now. The previous DLC offering, Curse of Osiris, while not explicitly bad, was definitely lackluster. And it didn't really do anything to fix any of Destiny 2's core problems. And one of those core problems is, of course, the lack of options and just specific game modes for players to engage in compared to the game's predecessor. If you go back into Destiny 1 right now, you'll notice that the differences are staggering. Heroic strikes have fantastic modifiers that make them a ton of fun to play. At the time of the recording you're watching right here, last week, the modifiers were like Solar Burn, Brawler, or Berserk, and Small Arm, so you could go in there and have an absolute ton of fun tearing through enemies and completing strikes. We had Horde modes in the form of Prison of Elders and the Archon's Forge. We had a PvP playlist where you could choose specific game modes rather than just being locked to two arbitrary playlists in the quick play playlist and the competitive playlist. If you wanted to go in and play some combined arms, you could do that. If you wanted to go play Clash, you could do that. If you wanted to just play Control, you could do that based on the playlists that were available during that week. Right now, the system is so limited that it's really kind of questionable that a lot of these things aren't available in the game, especially when it comes to heroic strikes. I was just as psyched as everybody else to hear that heroic strikes were coming back in Curse of Osiris. I did feel that was something that should have been in the base game, like a lot of other things, and it was weird that it wasn't. But it's mind-blowing to me that heroic strikes came back with no semblance of modifiers whatsoever. It's just harder enemies. Oh, and more of those harder enemies, and that was really incredibly weird to me, considering strikes were the main way you spent your time grinding up light levels in Destiny 1. And again, if you go back and you play strikes in Destiny 1 right now, it's some of the most fun you'll have in the Destiny franchise, period. And it's super crazy that they wouldn't bring that kind of thing back. And again, PvP feels super limited with the options that are available for players to dive into, and the lack of other weirder game modes like combined arms with full vehicle warfare and stuff. While it wasn't everyone's cup of tea, the lack of having that in the base of Destiny 2 is definitely apparent. And if you were just to go to the Destiny 1 director and look at the weekly activities, you can see really kind of how much is offered there. You've got your weekly Crucible playlist, your weekly story mission playlist where you can just go in and play story mission after story mission after story mission. You've got your weekly heroic strikes with modifiers. You've got your Nightfall. You've got your Prison of Elders. And of course, you've got your weekly featured raid. All of which was unique, provided loot like strike-specific gear or, specific raid gear and whatnot. And all of it was worthwhile content that I don't really understand why it wasn't brought into the main game of Destiny 2. And that also applies to the weapon system in Destiny 2. I'm not going to get too much into the whole static rolls versus random rolls thing. in this video, but I will say, you know, when it came down to Bungie saying that they were going to be making handcrafted static rolls, I think it's fair to say a lot of those handcrafted rolls are very underwhelming in Destiny 2. They just don't have very interesting perk combinations, and that's because of a mixture of things. Whether it be the fact that we have one less perk on most legendary weapons compared to what we did in D1, or the fact that none of the guns in Destiny 2 have perk setups that can match some of the weapons that we were given in Destiny 1. I mean, if you go back and you look at your vault in D1, you've got stuff like that perfectly rolled Vision of Confluence, which is an absolute joy to fire. You've got stuff like the Fatebringer, which was just an excellent PvE hand cannon. You've got stuff like that Destiny 2 Taken King vendor roll hung jury. That's the standard that I believe handcrafted weapons should stack up to. Something as perfect as that scout rifle. And there's really nothing like that in D2, which is kind of questionable, again, because with random rolls, you know, you had different perk combinations and whatnot, but those vendor weapons, those were handcrafted weapons, and we don't have that quality of handcrafted weapons with the static rolls in D2. And I do believe that's another problem that Bungie needs to face. But when going back and looking at the Destiny 1 experience versus the Destiny 2 experience, one big question kept popping back up to me amidst all these other questions of why wasn't this included? Why wasn't that included? And it's really the planetary world spaces. I really can't think of a good reason for why we can't go back to Mars right now, for why we can't go back to Venus, for why even we can't go back to the Cosmodrome. A lot of those world spaces in Destiny 1, I think, should have been in Destiny 2, and they're perfectly viable for Destiny 2. And I really kind of want to see those world spaces come back. Now, of course, we know Destiny 2 is a sequel, and of course, it has been reported that the game essentially saw a bit of a reboot a little over a year and a half before it initially released. And due to reporting, we know that they were initially considering bringing some, maybe all of the worlds from Destiny 1. So the Cosmodrome, the Moon, the Ishtar Sink on Venus, Mars, and the Dreadnought. They were initially considering bringing all of those worlds to Destiny 2, but decided against it at some point in development. And I think that was a bit of a mistake, because I really can't think of a reason for those worlds not to be accessible within the story and the context of Destiny 2. I mean, I know story-wise your vault in the tower got blown up, but the entire Cosmodrome didn't. Venus is still there, Mars is still there. We know because it's very likely going to be the place we head to in the spring DLC. The Dreadnought is still there, they reference it in the story. So why aren't these world spaces available for players to play on anymore? Now, I mean, it's not like the world spaces we have are too small, you know. I like the European Dead Zone, I like Nessus. But to me, it does feel like a bit of a missed opportunity to have some of those old stomping grounds around for extra missions, extra patrol events, extra strike zones, and all of that kind of stuff. Now, I'm not arguing that old strikes and whatnot should come back into Destiny 2. I don't know if we should be heading back into the Cosmodrome to take down Sepix Prime in Destiny 2. But that world space is definitely still of value, and they could certainly bring it over to Destiny 2 and maybe add even something new to it. And I would even venture to extend that to old items and old exotics returning in Destiny 2. Now, I know there was a lot of hubbub about Destiny 2 being a fresh restart to the game, but you know, they've already ported old exotics back. We've got the Hardlight, we've got the Mida Multitool, we've got the Jade Rabbit, we've got the Telesto. So in my opinion, they've already crossed that line, and I really don't see a reason for a lot of other exotics, some of which with different, you know, perk rolls so that they don't either break the game or aren't completely useless in Destiny 2, but I see no reason for those not to come back. After all, Destiny 2, I mean, was kind of always meant to be an RPG looter shooter MMO style game. And when MMOs and games like this generally expand, and I would very much consider Destiny 2 to be kind of just a big expansion to Destiny 1, or at least more of a reboot. But generally when MMOs and stuff like that expand, they don't get rid of all of their old content, they just add new content to it. And just going back and looking at the development of Destiny 2 and looking at the finished product that we have now versus what we had in Destiny 1, I really just don't see a reason for a lot of that content to not have some sort of presence in Destiny 2. I mean, right now we don't have a Horde mode, we don't have anything like the Prison of Elders or like the Archon's Forge. And a lot of the items and weapons we have right now are very lackluster, generally aren't worth the chase. And I think introducing a lot of that old content, since a lot of Destiny 2 is reused content already, I think reintroducing a lot of that stuff would definitely help the game out, and there's no real reason not to do it at this point. Which finally, I suppose, leads me to the fact that that actually might be the case. That actually might be something that's going on behind the scenes at Bungie right now. If you'll remember, about a month or so ago, we reported on a story concerning a data mining of Destiny 2's game files from the PC client, and what was pulled from them, including a bunch of audio files that directly reference world spaces and content from Destiny 1 coming back in Destiny 2. This was stuff like the audio files for patrol events, like when you go out into a patrol, you pick up a mission that says, I don't know, kill a bunch of enemies and collect these items from them, from Future War Cult, Dead Orbit, or the New Monarchy. And it directly referenced old Destiny 1 world spaces, places like the Cosmodrome, places like our Guardian going back to the Ishtar Sink on Venus, places like the Dreadnought, all of which Destiny 1 world spaces, and all of which referenced in the Destiny 2 audio files. And I said in our reporting at the time that that could certainly just have been a leftover from Destiny 2's development period, especially now that we kind of know they were considering bringing those spaces back during development and ultimately decided against it. But my hope is that it's content that is going to be coming back to the game. And, not just content, but also world spaces that are going to be coming back to the game. Possibly in an update, possibly in an upcoming DLC. I would definitely hope for the former rather than the latter, but realistically speaking, that would probably be content that comes in a DLC pack or an expansion pack down the line. Especially given the fact that we know that the spring DLC is probably going to be concerning Anna Bray and something going on in the icy caps of Mars. So we very much could see the return of some of that content, and I, especially at this point in the state of the game, would not be unwelcome to seeing those old world spaces come back, maybe with some new things added to them, some patrol missions, some public events, strikes, and all that kind of stuff, alongside changes to the weapon system. We know weapons need a change. We know the way they handle static rolls needs a change. We know the mod system needs a change. The Masterwork system, while it's a good step forward, doesn't really do anything to alleviate some of the greater problems with the overall blandness of the Destiny 2 weapon system. So changes to all of that, changes to PvP. People want to be able to select their playlist just like they could in Destiny 1. And just, all these other things that are available in Destiny 1 right now that could and should, in my opinion, be moved over to Destiny 2. Including, even possibly, if it's even possible with the way they've built the game, a change to the weapon system structure. I think the dual primary power weapon system was an interesting experiment, but overall, I think people would prefer having their primary, secondary, and heavy weapon once again. Also, give me back my machine gun. I need it. But alright, Guardians, that was it for my thoughts. I rambled on a bit there. But the too long didn't read version is basically, I do believe some of these old world spaces and some of these old activities should return to Destiny 2. They had a lot of value in Destiny 1, and there's really no reason for them not to be in the sequel of the game. And hopefully, Bungie feels the same way. But that's it for this one, guys. Thanks so much for watching. I cannot wait to read your thoughts down in the comment section below. What from Destiny 1 would you like to see make a return in Destiny 2? And that can be anything from structural changes to changes to the raid, to playlists, to PvP, to weapon systems. Anything that you want to see from Destiny 1 in Destiny 2, or just something about Destiny 2 you'd like to see changed. I want to see those comments down in the comment section below. And of course, if you enjoyed this video, feel free to drop a like and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on everything we here at Planet Destiny are putting out. But I'm out for now. Thank you guys so much for watching. And as always, I'm TheBlackLink. You Guardians, stay frosty. And hopefully, we'll be hearing something decent very soon.